Right, we are now just after 5 o'clock, which means my regular guest is it. Now, I have to be honest, I made a bit of a miscount, my own fault. I thought last week we were on number 100. It wasn't. This isn't 100 either. Actually, this is session 99. Next week, Thursday week today, will be session 100 of Sensory Healthy Chats with Laure Jackson from Santé on Jersey. Hello, Anne.
Hello, it is great to be here. And I hope, Mr. Radio Man, that you have some special music. I was thinking about it during the week and I thought, can we somehow, or what are we going to do? We need to do something, and it kind of has to be kind of like auditory is seems to be the sense to use to find something celebratory. Otherwise, yes. Not as if you, I was going to say, not as if you don't have enough to do. That's what I was going to say, but yeah.
And we do have some music on the system, so there must be something. I'm so excited. I was thinking, or We Built This City could work, or Danger Zone by Top Gun. There's all sorts of permutations of where we could potentially go. We might have to work on that one for next week. Now, we've been having these chats, 98 of them specifically. And every week we talk about, nearly every week, about sensory health, because you're an occupational therapist. You've been doing it for a little while now, so you're not new to this. How long have you been an occupational therapist now?
Oh, I know. It's over 30 years. That's the kind of scary thing. But it's also nice because I kind of feel as though I have a bit of a presence. It's kind of like, yes, with age comes experience. And it's like you go past the, I am getting older here into I have maturity. I have experience. I should have some wisdom. And yes, no, it is there. So it's, over 30 years. 31, 32, something like that.
Excellent. So that's been your day job in a sense. Sensory health, as a sort of, I was going to say, it probably started as a bit of a bolt-on extra to what you were doing, but then it became much more than just an additional part of being an occupational therapist. It's been the focus of so many years of your work.
Yeah, it has. I realized that I needed to, I couldn't do the standard OTE job because of wanting to home educate 3 children. And with having a husband with a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis and a visual impairment. And it was like, how do I make life work? And I thought, well, maybe I don't know if I can actually continue to work as an OT, although I will try to. So I set myself up independently, and I thought, well, actually, if I need to veer off in any way, shape or form, I can always be a sensory health coach, because the sensory processing and integration was just what always, I fell in love with when I first heard about it. And so it developed from there, especially knowing that I could do so much more online. And I want to make sensory health so normalized, not the clinical stuff, which is where I came from. I do the clinical stuff, but the power of it being for everybody can't be underestimated. And that is the message now going out through being a sensory health coach, trying to, meet needs on all levels, whether someone has a definite diagnosis or whether it's just a few tweaks can make life an awful lot easier and an awful lot better.
What is your last aha moment, not the band, but the experience of somebody who's kind of made it here? They've understood what it is they need to change and then seen the difference in their own life. What's the last time that how far back are we going for that?
This week, which is lovely. It's just even like two calls this morning, a recognition that actually when one of them was a mum, growing older, and the child, you get to an age when the child it's no longer cute when they are spinning and twirling and doing all kinds of manner of things that when they're little, it's kind of sweet and it's gorgeous, and then they get to 8, 9, 10, 11 and it no longer has that same draw, and there was just a bit of an aha chatting to the mum that actually that this isn't just the child being 5 anymore. This is a child who should technically have matured in their nervous system, should be typically different, and is recognizing that although we don't like the word should in many, many capacities, it does tell us that we need to handle, manage, nurture that child in a different way. because they are processing things differently. So that was a real, aha moment for her, realizing that, yeah, the spinning and the twirling, the upside down and the cartwheels and so on, it's not quite as appropriate as it used to be. And there are more things that we were able to uncover to then start recognizing that, yeah, let's go deeper. Let's find out what's going on and let's make life easier, because it's really tough in some of the areas that she's talking about.
But life is hard, and there are those things of acceptance. I suppose generally in society we accept certain things. I don't think anybody would have any problem at all whatsoever with, well, they shouldn't do, better not do, with a mum who's breastfeeding at 6 months. There's nothing that in society we can think, well, that's not right, that's a bit weird. No, it's the most normal thing in the world. If that child is 8 or 10 years old, well, society is going to say, not sure that's really appropriate anymore. Actually, biologically, it's becoming impossible anyway, as I discovered learning from the midwives, because at some point the baby literally can't then breastfeed because the mouth changes. So there is actually like a physiological limit, but sociologically as well, people will say, oh, that's a bit old now, rightly or wrongly. I'm not interested in that part, but there are these things that we kind of accept and don't accept. Some things we really should. Breastfeeding, absolutely normal. But there are other things where, like you say, it's not okay, that sort of behavior. And twirling, as a 2-year-old, if a girl's got a special like skirt on and it can frill up, you can stand them wanting to spin around in circles. It's enjoyable. When they're 15, 10, 12, like you say, now it becomes a problem, because actually if they fall over, they're not just hurting themselves, they could actually be seriously damaging somebody else. So there's the sort of societal norms, yes, good or bad perhaps, depending on your perspective, but also that there is day-to-day getting on with living without drawing more attention to yourself, because it's very hard being a parent. It's very hard. Everybody's staring and looking when your child isn't doing the thing they should do. And you don't want to draw even more attention to yourself, because that just gets more stressful and anxiety creating.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. And with this particular, if you're spinning and twirling in class as well, it's kind of that's tough for others, and how other children treat you, and it just compounds, makes things worse from there. But also it's really difficult when you're a parent, when one of the other mums is really empathetic, has a beautiful understanding of other people. And yet you have other children or teens or, other adults who that understanding of social norms just isn't there. And they look really rude. And you're there as a parent thinking, I have tried everything to help them understand other people's feelings. But sometimes, but they just don't get it. They just don't get it, full stop. It's not even sometimes, it's not even most of the time, it's just full stop. They just do not get it. And it's trying to allow the parent to be able to take what other people are going to say, because other people will judge that individual, will judge that child, thinking, how was she brought up? But actually, it's got nothing to do. You've got the most beautiful mom with the most empathetic way of being. But it's the child's way that they interpret the world and their brain that isn't enabling them to process emotion and things like that in the same way.
Which sort of, I wasn't going this way, but let's go there anyway. It makes me think of sensory healthily fitting in. Because I remember being at a church one day and we're waiting for the church service to start. And there's this 15, 16-year-old kid in the corner with the footballs, banging the football against the wall and against the wall and against the wall. And it went on and on and on. And people were looking at me smiling, but gritty teeth. That sense of, I'm okay with this, I'm really happy. They're not, because it's absolutely, completely inappropriate to do that in that context, because you know what, it's not right. This is supposed to be a church service. Reverence, that thing we've lost in society, which is really important, but actually it was totally wrong for that to be going on. But people were forcibly being okay with it, and all that then does is create anger, creates bitterness, it creates frustration. We get wound up, we then lose any sense of the fruit of the spirit of being kind and compassionate, self-controlled. And then you don't want to, at the other hand, having worked in children's ministry, you don't want to say to parents, all right, make your children sit down, because that's going to happen, isn't it? No. So you've got somewhere between these two extremes where we need to try and find a way of working together, because there are also societal norms. Again, come back to that phrase, which I don't necessarily like, but there are those norms and ways of getting on together. You can't go to the local climbing frame with your children and throw all the other kids off because you want your child on there. That's not going to go down well. So we're always trying to find ways of getting on with each other in society. But how do we help people help their own children, their own grandparents, whatever sensory healthy age you're struggling with? How do we best help them fit in when we don't want to suppress and squash people, because that's really bad. And we also don't want to say, yeah, whatever you want, go for it. Because actually also that's not okay either.
No, it's not okay. And that's where we go back to the assessment. We go back to finding out what their thumbprint is, because those things that are driving the behaviors, we need to find what the drivers are. And then that could be from any sense that is causing that. Any of the 8 senses that we talk about, could be driving a behavior, could be driving, the kicking of the ball against the wall. Plus, there could be things that are not sensory. So until we've got a really good understanding of all of the senses and how they're processing, you can't go in there with any sense of, well, you can try things, and that's what people do. People get ideas off, Facebook and YouTube, and that's fine. But there's nothing that replaces having a proper look. How is their system functioning? Only takes, for me, it takes an hour or two to do it properly. We can do screenings in 5-10 minutes, but it's a deep dive to really understand what it is about that person, and therefore what are the things that are going to work for that person, not general stuff that is often banded around. And that's it's getting to know the individual, seeing how God has made them fearfully and wonderfully made, just as they are. Let's see how we can make life easier for them.
And it's that juxtaposition, isn't it, of, on the one hand, you want your children to get involved in situations, and I'm thinking as a parent, when my kids were little, the climbing frame is a classic one. How do you get on with other kids? They're not at school. They're not in the same groups. Therefore, there's this, we don't know. Generally speaking, in my own observations on life, the younger the child, the better they are interacting with others, because they just get on with it. The older we get, the less good we are at playing with each other or working with each other, perhaps, as we get older and more cranky. But on the one hand, you want your children to engage, but on the other hand, you don't want them to cause a problem. You don't want them to hold them so far back that they don't even try, because, well, let's not offend anybody. Let's just hang back. Actually, you want them to try and to engage. And it's really hard to find that balance of trying without being rude, of holding back without not trying. And somewhere in the middle of that is trying to cultivate this little person to be confident and outgoing and kind and polite and all the stuff in the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah. Don't all our parents, don't anybody who's been a mum or a dad or a carer or an adopter, it's just, everybody needs a little badge. It's just like everybody, we've all done the best that we could with what we know and what we don't know. It's it's a tough call. It really is. One
of the first things I realized as a parent for the first time with my first son, thinking, we read a few books. Very relevant, because you know what? That's talking about somebody else's child, or a generalization that doesn't apply to my child. And what we realized was, do you know what? All those parenting books out there, not that they're all rubbish, because there's some great material that we can glean from them. But if you take a book and think, right, this is how it's going to be, you will fail. Absolutely, you will fail, because no one book is going to help you. None of those self-help books for parenting. You need probably 20 or 30 to get a rough idea. And then you still need to be willing to chuck it all out and think, that doesn't work for my child, does it? And then they get older, and then a second child comes along. Where's the book for that? Because you need the first 30 books that are written for child 2, and then child 3, but only if child 1 was born in this month, because they're going to be different to the other children who are born in that month. And it's not simple, and it's not easy. And we've got to take a much more individualistic approach to raising little people into amazing little human beings.
Yeah. And help our big people, flourish in the workplace, do what they do well, and then be the best parent that they can be, because there's a lot of adults walking around with stuff that they have no idea why they react the way they do, or in marriages, and people are saying, they're struggling. And it's like, well, let's dig deeper. Let's get to the root of some of these behaviors that are more tricky.
One of the things I've really enjoyed is, we're talking about children perhaps a bit more focused today, but one of the things I've loved from the very beginning is one of the very first people that got in touch and said, "Anne, help," when they were nearly 60 years old. because sensory health is not about small children. Sensory health is about every person, which if I've learned nothing in the last 2 years and a bit, 98 sessions, 99th today, if I've learned nothing else, it's that it affects every age. That there isn't an age when you think, oh, it's all right, I've reached sensory health, healthy maturity. I'm there now. Well, no, because you get older and your ears start to fade, or you get a bit older and your knees don't quite work as they used to do, or a bit of arthritis starts, and even though you were physically really well, connected to your own sensory health, now you can't hold things and you've got to learn things. So all the way through life, from pre-birth, which we've looked at that as well, mums who are pregnant, how do we help the babies, and all the way through to folk with dementia, and how do we help people with dementia with sensory health. And that's what I've enjoyed about these chats, because I think if we'd only talked about toddlers, not I'd have got bored, but I think we'd have run out of things to say. But because this is every single person on the planet, never run out of stuff to talk about. I don't anyway, but that's a different story.
And also, I mean, what you were talking there about arthritis, I don't think we've spoken about this before. One of the mums that, one of the people that I saw, she wasn't a mum actually, one of the people that I saw was also, was coming to retirement age, hadn't been diagnosed with autism, but had, or ADHD, but definitely had traits, elements of each and every one. But what she did, she regulated herself so much, because it's a part and parcel often of those diagnoses, one of a generalization, she says, to be kind of anxious. There are social situations, but there's also sensory experiences, there's sensory overload when there's just too much in the environment that's going on, and you can shut down, and adults have their own burnout and their own or their own versions of meltdowns of what children have. So this lady was doing this amazing stuff. And of course, here in Jersey, where I am, we have beautiful beaches and sea, and folks can get out into nature really, really easily. So that was a go-to for her regulation. Now that the arthritis is setting in, it's just we really need to look at how we are going to get you regulated, keep you regulated, now that the physical stuff is getting harder. So it does, every aspect, every stage of life throws up something different that we have to think about and think, right, okay, how are we going to do this for your age and stage, for who you are and for what you want to do? If she didn't want to be doing certain things anymore, well, that'd be fine, but she does. So it's just right, what can we do to make that happen?
Which is the OT part of the thing that you do, because occupational health,
occupational therapy, you got it right the first time.
Not like we've had lots of these chats or anything, and I've had lots.
I know what it is, because we say it's sensory health, but it's occupational therapy. So if you get occupational health, that's why. Okay, but I'm a bit slow on that one. But maybe someone else who was listening got that before me. But that's why we have the confusion. There you go.
I still don't know what I do, but I think it's really hard in life to know how to go through life, but we do need to go steadily, and we do need to adapt. I mean, one of the things for me is when I started on heart meds that stop my heart beating faster, one of the things I love to do, if I get a stiff back, which I've had not on and off, but it always comes and goes, I go for a faster walk, and it's the speed of walking with my arm swinging that fixes my back, and you can hear it releasing as you go along. Well, when my heart wasn't beating faster, I literally couldn't walk faster. So in the last year, I've had a stiff back far more frequently. There's literally nothing I can do that I can find that will work. And it's really frustrating. Now, I haven't given up fully trying to fix that problem. I get a stiff back. It's just one of those things now I have to live with because I'm on heart medication. But I'm not going to call them sweet spots, because that would suggest that they're really nice, but they're at least weak medication parts of the day when I can go for a walk and I can actually go a bit faster. So I've had to learn to adapt to go in those times. And it's really frustrating, because after a year of this, I still want to go out walking when I would normally go out walking, like after my show. Can't do it. It's not a good moment for me at that point. I really miss going out for a walk after my radio show. It was really good. Now I can't do that. I have to find another time. Went out last night. The children were going to bed, and I said to Joe, I need to go for a walk. So it was like 11 o'clock at night, got the torches out because we're in the middle of nowhere, went for a walk at 11 because I can walk, and I needed to walk from my back, and it helped me to sleep better. So we're having to make adaptations just because I'm on medication that prevents me from doing something I've done for the last 47 years. And so we're finding a different way of doing it, because that's part of life, is learning not just what you can't do, but how can you carry on doing the things that you need to do, that
Yeah.
you want to do, that you'd like to do, that you choose to do, that are good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a perfect normal, example there. Something for folks to take on and really think through what can they do in their own circumstances, in their own environment to keep, rather than giving up. It's very easy to give up. It's very easy to just, not bother. The effort's just too much, but a little bit of thought for something. What was the one thing you can change to make that life that little bit easier this week?
And have a try.
Mm.
I'm not the greatest example in the last 12 months. There have been times where I just don't bother going out of the house. What's the point? I'm going to get 50 yards and come home again. You could argue, well, at least you've walked 50 yards, yeah, but it's really depressing and frustrating and upsetting and quite distressing when I can't do a mile's walk just because I feel like it, which is how I would do that 3-4 times a day. Just the year before, I would do that quite normally. And then last year, I'm on different medication and it's doing what it needs to do. But of course, the side effect of the medication is now I've got a stiff back because I can't walk through the day. So I get less bad sleep. So I get more tired. So I get more stiff back and don't want to walk. And this is just a natural part of aging. There are some things we can't fight. I can't fight taking the medication. Well, I can. It's a fruitless task. I need the stuff in my heart. I know that. I've tried not taking them. Didn't work so well. But you either give up or you try and find a way. And just taking those little steps every day, sometimes that's all I've managed. And if I have only gone 50 yards and thought, I can't do this, I'm going home because my heart isn't beating faster and I'm not enjoying this. And I come home, but you know what? At least I did try and I haven't given up, and I'm not giving up. I've got 3 kids and a great wife who keep on encouraging me lovingly. But that's the other part of what we talk about, is the people that support the folk who are having the issue.
Yes. Yes, absolutely crucial. And again, one of the conversations this week, it's about I don't need to see the individual themselves. I was working online and they were trying to get their head around all this. And it's just like, my job is to equip and empower you as the main person there involved in their life. Then when you understand it on their behalf, you can communicate to them when they're receptive, when you think they're in a good place and a good space, a good headspace, and you can communicate to them in a way that you know that they will understand. I can communicate with you because you are a fully functioning adult. You've got your cognitive abilities. You can talk to me. You're fairly, So this is why I equip the people who are normally, perfectly capable of taking on this information and making it work for the individual who may not have the capacity themselves, and just feed into them over the years to come, so that eventually they will make good choices for themselves, good life choices to stay as well and as sensory healthy as possible.
Life is hard. It can be difficult. Life can be great. It's really important that we make the most of those really good moments, which is what I do. If I can find a moment when my heart is happier to beat because the drugs are the weakest possible, that's when I go out and have a walk. Doesn't always work perfectly. It's not always the same time, but you have to kind of feel your way through the day sometimes, because life doesn't give you everything you want forever. Health changes. We grow older. It's one of those interesting parts of life that as we are born, we're dying. I mean, it sounds quite macabre, but it's actually true. And therefore, make the most of the days you've got, because you don't know how many days we're going to have, as the Bible says. Slightly better than that. But it means we need to make the most of the life we have, because we don't know. And things will change and challenges come that we didn't see at all. We can see some challenges down the road. You know that, okay, in 20 years' time, I'm going to start to walk slower. And by the age of 80, 90, if I'm still alive, then I'm going to have various health issues. And we expect that. We can see those things. I think if I remember rightly from Richard, when you turn 40, there's usually quite a physical downturn. When you turn 60, there's another big kind of downturn physically. So there are moments in life that we can prepare for, but there are plenty that we can't. My 20-year-old son suddenly having a hernia and waking the house up with screaming because of the pain. That wasn't something you can plan for. There's no way we could have known that was coming a couple of years ago. You just have to deal with it the best you can. But if we prepare for what we know is coming the best we can, then that's better. And then when the things that we don't know are coming challenge us, if we're not working at 130% all the time, yes, it'll overwhelm us, but we'll probably be in a slightly better place than just charging through life. It's all good when, yes, but be careful.
Yeah, because it's interesting. I was actually Googling today just the life expectancy where we're at. What are we now? 2026. And so for men, it was like 78, and for women, it was 83. So I was trying to work out, thought, right, I've got this much time left. How can I make the most? What are the things that are really important to me? I know I'm very young to be considering all of this, but I do like to plan ahead, and I want to be wise and thinking, what is my legacy? It's not just about legacy. It's not because I'm growing old, I want legacy, but genuinely, what can I make sure that I pass on? Who can I encourage? Who can I help? How can I get the word out about sensory health? How can I support? What can I do? And it's quite liberating in a different way, thinking, right, I know that the typicals, obviously we can be taken home at any point, but it's like, how do I make the most of the life that I've got left? Because I've lived the life so far, and really glad to be at the point that I'm at. But it's like, right, how do I make the most of the rest of my life? So slight diversion there, absolutely. But it's interesting that you brought it. Yeah, just thinking about, what have you got left and what are you doing with it?
Because there's two ways you can see that. Oh, I've only got 30 years left, 20 years left, 5 years left, depending on your age. Well, that's all I've got left. Well, that's quite a depressing way of looking at life. Or you can think, hey, I've got another 5 years. I've got another 30 years. What can I accomplish in these 30 years? Because you're either grinding to a halt, and we know it's a classic thing, but teachers, they get to the summer holidays, they stop because they're working at 180 million miles an hour. They stop and they spend 3 weeks ill because their body's like, well, thankfully now I can actually have a rest, and you're going to be ill because adrenaline stopped. Well, that's no different to when we're hitting 65, generally speaking, retirement age here in the UK, at least. It's going up a little bit, I think. But we either keep charging on and seeing what we can do, which is where occupational health and therapy stuff, occupational, I don't know, heathery, I don't know, they can mix the words up, but we can keep going, we can do amazing things. But if we just stop, well, I'm too old. Well, yeah, you're going to have all sorts of problems because you need to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my mum is in her 80s, and so I started at the gym and said to her, look, why don't you come? It'll be good. So she says, well, maybe, but I don't like the fact that I have to go, kind of thing. So she stopped for a while, but then she realized that there's no maintenance. So I mean, if she's not going to the gym, she came back this week and it's just like, oh, I didn't realize the good that it was doing me. So she's now back, and it's like, it's great. Why can't you in your 80s be in the gym and keeping fit, and as well as you possibly can be, getting that proprioceptive input and yes.
But we either think, oh, well, I've only got 20 years left. What can I possibly do? Or we think, no, I've got 20 years. How many new projects can I start? How many more people can I encourage? How can I improve this about my health? And, the classic things that we think of when people are younger is, can I run with my children when they have their own children? That's quite a common kind of future planning situation. I don't run, never really do running, so that's never really a question I bother to ask. However, there are other things that we can plan for the future. And I think it's just important. And if you are struggling with your physical health, you'll go and see a doctor, or you should do. And if you're struggling with your sensory health and you're thinking, what even is sensory health? Oh, that's what it is. Then you have people like you who can come along and assist, because we want to get the help. We want to encourage people. That's why we have a radio station and the magazines. It's how do we uplift? How do we encourage? How do we give people a reason to get up tomorrow morning and the morning after that? Well, here's a reason why, and we're going to be here for you for that. And there's so much that we can do to make the world better if we just try.
Amen.
There you go. Right. Now, you mentioned songs. I put some songs in. We'll have to think of some more for next week. We talked about Aha, slightly humorously. I've got Aha with the Living Daylights from James Bond. And then we've got Let's Get Excited by Alicia Dixon. I'm going to play that one for a few reasons. One, who knows what life's going to be like tomorrow for any of us? We don't know. Next week, next year. However, right now you're alive, you're listening to this, so life is very good for you because you've got the radio on and we're here for you. So life is brilliant. But it's good to get excited about the future. And I am genuinely excited. We have little bits of paper. This is a bit sad, isn't it? Behind the scenes. So we write down on here. Can I hold it up to the thing? Which you can just about see. That's a little piece of paper. We do an interview, we write it down. I'm really excited next week that I'm going to be writing down 100 on the interview sheet. It then gets processed by Nathan and edited and put to YouTube and all the other stuff that has to happen. It's a way of, it's in-house organization. It's piece of paper, it can't crash. It doesn't get erased easily. But I'm excited about next week because It's something to look forward to. Well, what you're excited about? Well, it's 100th. It's something to celebrate. You know why? Because celebrating and marking things, as we keep on saying, is always worth doing.
It is indeed. I can't wait. I don't know. We'll to be chatting away, nothing and everything, but it'll be beautiful and special, and hopefully equipping, encouraging, and enlightening for our lovely listeners.
It'll definitely be different from normal somehow, although I haven't planned that in yet or told Anne any of the thoughts I haven't yet had.